It's November 30th, 2014. And I was just describing some of the things that the United States government did to me. And when they were stealing music from me, they also threatened me and issued death threats against me from military bases. They took me to different forts, military bases that had fort in the name, of it. And I was getting assaulted and drugged with Haldol by medical persons and military and FBI that wanted me to shut up and quit talking about how the United States government was stealing my music from me and getting rich off of it. So they were using military bases to give death threats and other kinds of threats against me as well. And when the United States government then wanted to see how their phone rape of me while the phone rings situation played out, and if that would work in the future, which is what they had always intended if I survived, if I didn't get bumped off earlier, they had always planned on using that at some point against me. They used Alvaro Pardo. They used their own employee, Alvaro Pardo, and his friend Henry to do that to me in a situation in Washington, D.C. after the United States government kidnapped my son from me and lied about me. I went to Washington, D.C. thinking I might find some lawmakers or some activists or someone who could possibly take a case, maybe find a law firm that would help me. Because I wasn't going to find it over in the Pacific Northwest where I got shuffled from FBI office in Portland, Oregon, Seattle, Washington, and the regional headquarters in California and tortured. Like the FBI was on my side. Ms. Garrett, we need to do some more STD testing of your daughter who we're raping. The FBI was really there for me. And that's when you hear the big Chinese gongs crash, the cymbals. Because, anyway. So I went to D.C., maybe stupidly, when it's right next door to Virginia, CIA. And, but I did think that there had to be some people in D.C. that were activist-minded, maybe even some people who were spies, who hated the United States, and might find out about my situation and somehow be able to help me because they knew that the United States was corrupt and they'd done all these things to me. So once I got over there, the United States government basically tried to trap me. And they set me up to be isolated with one rapist of theirs that worked for their government after another again. And skipping over a couple of those government rapists whose which are situations that I can talk about later, that involved more of incapacitating me first to raping. The next person that they shoved me over to, that they had suddenly presenting himself, was Alvaro Pardo, and after I went out with him and tried to be social, I had forgotten who he was. I didn't remember him either from my childhood or being younger. And I didn't remember his friend Henry either, but I met him too when I was younger. And I'd also met Alberto, supposedly his cousin or uncle or something. Or Alfredo. And so then he said that I got shoved out of my housing, and the United States government kept trying to block me from having any kind of normal, stable housing. And on that particular night, after, well, a whole situation of things occurred to where I suddenly had no place to go, where I had a place to live for a short time. And I got trapped over there because when I asked for even a bus pass, which didn't cost that much, from Washington State to get back to Washington State, they didn't want me to go back to Washington State yet. They wanted me to get targeted out in D.C. first, while they worked on my son, apart from me. And they refused to process any kind of request that I had where it would make them responsible for paying for transportation so that I could attend visitation of my son. So they deliberately trapped me to be out in a position where the United States government was going to experiment on me again and have me raped again. And they brought Alvaro and Henry along, had Alvaro tell me on this one day that I got stuck out with no place to go and thought and didn't remember them. He said, I live with a nurse, and my housemate is a nurse, which sounds safe. And he said, there's an extra room in the house, and you can have the extra room. Nobody's there because the other guy moved out. So then I got there. I was already had something to drink. I had a lot to drink on that particular night, and I got there, and the room that I was told was available for me to sleep in on my own was locked. So then Alvaro was telling me that, I said, oh, can I sleep on the couch downstairs in the living room? And he said no, his roommate wouldn't like it, this nurse. So he said, I have a really big bed, and you can sleep on one side and I won't touch you, and I'll sleep on the other side. So then after 4 days of having to do that and sleeping on my side of the bed and trying to figure out a way to get out of this basically government hostage situation again, he became intimate with me, and then he tried to have sex with me, and I started pushing him off, and I said no, and he got more forceful and started pushing me down, and got mad and more insistent. And I kept saying, I said no, and I was trying to force him off, and then all of a sudden the phone rang, and basically they pulled their whole government scenario of this is your warning. The phone rang. Alvaro just picked up the phone. It was Henry. Then Henry wanted to talk to me, and they used all the same code words and cues with that phone ringing in the middle of my protesting being raped that they'd used in the past when I was a kid, which meant if you don't shut up and start acting like you like it, you're maybe dead. So that's what they did to me. And so then Alvaro basically raped me. And he used the government organized crime and their attempts to figure out ways that they could rape me and make it look like I consented to this. He used that to his advantage to do this. And he wasn't the only person who did that on the East Coast. They had, the United States government used another individual who's from Argentina, and they did the same thing with phone ringing. And that is another employee who works with the United States government. And he's a major steel owner. He owns a big, huge steel construction and I guess fabrication company in Argentina. And he did the exact same thing that Alvaro did, and they practiced the same tactic to facilitate a rape with me. So at the time that I did not specifically remember, oh yeah, this is what they did to me when I was a kid, because it had been like 2 decades since they practiced that form of torture against me. But they had practiced that with Mike Middleton and in England many times. And they also practiced it in the United States. And from what I remember, Canada was also involved in that strategy. I believe there was a guy named Bruce and some kind of Canadian cop, and he was also involved. Canadians were also involved in this telephone ringing to get her to shut up and accept this rape and act like she likes it, kind of thing. So that was another rape strategy the United States government used against me. So I guess then from there I did still try to escape, and I got stuck.